My name is Kara Lennox, and if you're the kind of person who believes people don't run from ghosts, then you've never met me, because I've spent 29 years running, from places, from people, from versions of myself I couldn't stand to look at in the mirror. And every time I swore it was the last time. The last town. The last late-night bus ticket with no destination scribbled on the back. The last time I'd stand in a field at midnight, trying to catch my breath because my heart felt like it belonged to someone else. But here's the part you won't believe, the part that still makes my hands shake when I say it out loud. For all the miles I put between me and the things that haunted me, I never once outran the sound of hoofbeats. Horses. Always horses. Since I was a kid hiding under the hayloft at my grandfather's farm, pressing my ear to the warm flank of his old roan gelding, pretending if I listened close enough, I'd hear something that made sense. A promise. A secret. Maybe just a heartbeat. Strong enough to drown out my OWNSO when people ask me how I ended up here, in this half-forgotten patch of frostbitten pasture that calls itself a ranch. I tell them it's because I needed a job. They nod like that explains everything. They don't ask what I'm really doing here, standing at the edge of this broken fence at 3 in the morning, whispering my sins into the dark. They don't know about him. They don't know about Ash. Ash isn't my horse. He's not anybody's horse, if you ask him. They say he used to belong to a barrel racer who left in the dead of winter when the debts got too heavy and the trailer too small to carry both dreams and disappointment. Now he's just that horse, the one Holt, the ranch manager, calls a waste of feed. Too big. Too skittish. Too much trouble to break when there's money to be made on lesson ponies and docile trail geldings. Don't bother with him, Lennox, Holt told me my first day. He spat the words into the dirt like they were tobacco juice. You want to keep your pretty hands attached, stay on your side of that fence. I wanted to say pretty hands don't mean much when they've never held anything worth keeping. But I just nodded. I always nod when people like Holt talk, people who think fences keep secrets in. I spent the whole first week nodding while I mucked out stalls and patched the barn roof where last winter's ice cracked the shingles like old bones. I did what I was told. I smiled when the other hands called me the horse girl behind my back, like I hadn't heard it 100 times in 100 other towns. But every night, when the lights went out and the laughter and country music drifted off to the bunkhouse, I found myself here. By this fence. By him. Tonight the sky is the color of rusted iron, low clouds pressed so tight you'd think the stars forgot this place exists. My breath fogs the air as I lean on the top rail, my fingers numb through the holes in my gloves. Ash stands 30 feet away, a dark shape cut out of the darker night. His ears flick when I shift my weight, but he doesn't bolt like Holt swore he would. He just watches me, head high, tail flicking at the ghost of a breeze that cuts through the pasture. I've been talking to him for a week now. Whispering nothing into the cold. Telling him stories I don't say to people, how my mother used to braid my hair so tight it gave me headaches that lasted all day, how my father once sold my grandfather's old mare for scrap when the taxes came due. How I still dream about that mare sometimes, standing at a fence line that goes on forever, waiting for a girl who never comes back. Tonight I don't tell him any of that. Tonight I just watch him watch me. Somewhere behind me, an owl calls low and lonely, like it's asking if I'm coming home. I ignore it. Instead, I shift my boot into the dirt so he knows I'm here, not trying to sneak up on him like so many have. I learned that trick a long time ago. Prey animals hate surprises. So do girls like me. Hey, Ash, I murmur, my voice catching on the cold. You gonna stand there all night, or you gonna come say hello? He doesn't. Of course he doesn't. He just lowers his head a fraction, one ear twisting to catch the sound of my words. I imagine he can hear the heartbeat thudding in my throat. He probably can. I take a step closer. The fence creaks under my hand. He shifts, weight rolling from one back leg to the other. Not running. Not staying either. Balanced on the knife's edge between fight and flight. I know that edge. I live on it. I lean my elbows on the top rail. It's rough under my forearms, the splinters digging through my coat. I welcome the sting, proof I'm still here. Proof I'm still real. You know what they say about you? I whisper. They say you're trouble. That you're too wild to trust. That you're not worth the hay it costs to keep you standing on 4 legs. Ash doesn't blink. Doesn't breathe, or maybe he does, but the air between us is too cold to carry it. They say the same thing about me, I admit. My breath curls out in a ghost of a laugh. Not the 4 legs part. But the rest. For a heartbeat, maybe longer, I swear I see something shift behind those dark eyes. Recognition. A flicker of me too. I'd reach out, but I don't. I know better than to push my luck. And maybe he knows better than to let me. A gust of wind rattles the fence. Somewhere in the barn, a loose shutter bangs once, then settles into silence again. Ash flicks his ears toward the noise, then back to me. I'm close enough now that if I leaned just a bit further, I could touch him. I can see the faint dapples along his flank, the way the moonlight catches the ridge of old scars hidden beneath. The dark hair. A story no one here bothered to ask about, not even Holt. Too busy counting hay bales and cursing broken gates, I press my palm flat to the top rail. The wood is slick with frost. Ash lowers his head another inch, curious, maybe. Testing me. Okay, I whisper. One more step. But you gotta promise not to run. Of course he doesn't promise. Horses don't lie, but they don't make promises either. They just decide whether you're worth standing still for. I slide my foot forward. The fence is the only thing between us now, 2 feet of splintered pine and the silence of the night. Ash breathes out. It's soft, warmer than the air around us. It hits my wrist like a question. I hold still. I don't flinch. I don't beg, and then, so slow I think I might be dreaming it, he closes the last inch himself. His muzzle brushes my glove, just once. A breath. A heartbeat. Mine stops, his doesn't, and for the first time in years, I realize maybe I don't need to run anymore. I didn't sleep after that night. Not really. I lay on my bunk with the thin blanket pulled up to my chin, my boots still caked with frost at the foot of the bed. Every time I closed my eyes, I felt it again, the hush of his breath on my wrist, the warm drift of it melting through the cold like an answer I'd been waiting my whole life to hear. I kept my hand outstretched. For hours after he pulled back. I wanted to believe I'd feel it lingering there, a ghost of warmth pressed into my palm. Maybe I did. Or maybe I just wanted it enough to make it real. When the sun rose, a thin, watery smear that barely warmed the frost off the barn roof. I dragged myself back into my boots and pretended nothing had changed. I forked hay into stalls while the other ranch hands smoked cheap cigarettes out back and bragged about how much they'd drunk last night. I nodded when Holt barked at me to scrub out the troughs near the old corral. I laughed when one of the guys made some joke about me whispering secrets to the ghost horse. But inside, everything felt different. The fence line wasn't just splintered pine anymore. It was a door. And for the first time, Ash had left it cracked open by dusk. I was so wound up I couldn't keep my hands still. I kept checking the old watch on my wrist, a hand-me-down from my grandfather that still ticked too loud when the world got quiet. My shift should have ended at sundown, but I stretched every chore until Holt finally spat at the dirt and stomped off toward the bunkhouse, muttering about girls who think they know better. He didn't see me circle back behind the hay shed, boots crunching on the thin crust of frost that had already started to gather again. He didn't see me slip through the dark like I'd been doing it all my life. Ash was waiting at the fence. Same spot, same way he always was. Like he hadn't moved an inch since I left him the night before. Maybe he hadn't. Maybe we were both stuck in that moment when the cold world pressed in and the only warm thing left was the hush of breath between us. I stopped a few feet back this time. I didn't want to spook him, but I didn't want to break the spell either. Hey, I called softly, my voice a raw scrape in the cold air. Still here. His ears twitched. His head lifted, nostrils flaring as he caught my scent on the wind. He didn't step back. Didn't turn away. A good sign. Or maybe just a sign he was willing to give me a chance to mess this up myself. I took one slow step forward, boots sinking into the soft dirt. The fence creaked when I rested my hand on the top rail, just like last night. This time, the frost Bit through the thin leather of my gloves before I could find the warmth of his breath. You know they all think I'm wasting my time, I said, my voice low and steady so he'd keep listening. Standing out here, talking to a horse nobody wants to claim. They think you're half wild. Broken in the head. Not worth the hay you eat. Ash flicked an ear, then snorted softly, just enough for a cloud of steam to drift through the moonlight. I imagined him rolling his eyes if he could, but I know better, I went on, pressing my fingers harder into the rail. You're not broken, are you? You're just waiting. Like me. I didn't know what I wanted from him, an answer, maybe. Or at least the tiny miracle of him stepping forward again like he had before. But Ash just stood there, breathing slow and deep, his ribcage shifting under the dark slope of his shoulder. I swear I could feel it again, that quiet drumbeat that didn't belong to me. So steady, so sure. The opposite of every heartbeat I'd ever known. I risked it. I slipped my glove off, tucking it into my pocket with fingers already stiff from the cold. The night air bit at my bare skin, but I didn't care. I lifted my hand, palm out, breath locked somewhere between my teeth and my ribs. Come on, I whispered. I know you don't owe me anything. But, just one more time. Ash lowered his head a fraction. He didn't step back. He didn't come forward. Either. We stood there like that for what felt like forever, a girl and a horse, a fence line between them, the whole world holding its breath to see which one would flinch first. Then, with a quiet snort, he shifted his front hoofs. One step. Then another. The frost crunched under his weight, louder than my own heartbeat for once. When he stopped, his muzzle was so close I could see the tiny crystals of ice clinging to the fine hair around his nostrils. His breath hit my wrist again, warm, alive. I almost pulled back, not from fear but from the sharp ache that comes when something you want actually shows up and looks you in the eye, but I didn't pull back. I pressed closer. My fingertips brushed the soft edge of his muzzle, just once. His whiskers twitched under my touch, rougher than I expected. He didn't bolt. He didn't even flinch. He just breathed, and through that breath, I felt it, the quiet, steady drum under skin and bone. His heartbeat, so close I almost wondered if it was mine echoing back through him. I don't know how long we stayed like that. Minutes? Hours? The cold didn't matter. The dark didn't matter. Holt's voice in my head telling me I was an idiot didn't matter. All that mattered was the hush between us, the space where no one else had ever been allowed to stand. Ash snorted softly, his breath catching in my scarf. I laughed, too loud, maybe, but I didn't care. The sound made his ears flick and for a split second I swore he almost leaned in. I pulled my hand back an inch, then pressed it flat against the rail again so he'd know I wasn't chasing him. I wasn't trying to catch him. I was just here, and so was he. A distant slam echoed from the bunkhouse, of a door, maybe, or someone knocking over an empty feed bucket. Ash's head lifted fast, ears swiveling toward the noise. The moment snapped like an old fence wire. It's okay, I murmured, even though I knew it wasn't. I know. I should go. But my feet didn't move. Neither did his. He turned his head back to me, eyes catching the pale moonlight, deep and dark as the space between stars. He took one slow step closer, so close the warm puff of his breath brushed my cheek this time, not just my hand. I could feel it again, his heartbeat, steady as a drum against the cold hush of the night. I wanted to stay there forever. Just me and him. No fences. No voices telling me to keep my pretty hands away. Just that heartbeat, so close I could swear it knew mine. A sharp whistle cut through the dark, Holt's voice barking my name, echoing across the empty corrals. Lennox. You out here? Ash jerked his head back, ears pinned for half a second before he caught himself. He didn't run though. Not this time. He just shifted his weight, eyes flicking between me and the bunkhouse lights now flickering through the barn windows. I know, I said softly, pressing my palm one last time to the top rail. I'm going. His breath ghosted across my sleeve as he leaned in one last time, the faintest nudge, so gentle I almost missed it. Then he stepped back, just enough to vanish into the shadows at the edge of the fence. I turned before I could second guess it, boots crunching through the frost as Holt's flashlight beam swept across the pasture. He didn't see Ash. He never did, you deaf, Lennox? Holt barked when he spotted me trudging back toward the barn. What are you doing out there? Talking to ghosts again? I didn't answer. I just wiped my cold hand on my jeans, fingers tingling where his heartbeat still hummed against my skin, because the truth is, ghosts don't get this close, and I wasn't running anymore. I thought the next day would feel different. That I'd wake up with that soft brush of breath still pressed to my wrist like a secret brand only I could feel. And maybe I did, for the first hour or two. I moved through my morning chores like I had something to protect, a sliver of warmth hidden under my skin that none of them could steal with their smirks and jokes, but by noon, the cold crept back in. The sun never really broke through the low winter clouds, and my fingers went numb filling water troughs that froze over again. By evening, Holt's voice bellowed across the yard every 15 minutes, orders barked at no one in particular, but sharp enough that everyone jumped to pretend they had somewhere to be. I kept my head down, pitchfork scraping across straw, boots sinking in half-frozen mud outside the feed shed. But my eyes drifted. Always drifting, out past the paddocks, over the sagging fence line where the dark shape of Ash sometimes lingered like a ghost that only showed itself when you stopped looking. Too hard to by dusk, I couldn't help myself. I slipped out before the last hay bale hit the ground, mumbling something to one of the boys about checking the old gate by the south fence. He just grunted, too tired to care that I didn't come back right away. The air was sharper tonight, dry, the frost a thin white dust on the splintered rails. The clouds had cleared, leaving a brittle scatter of stars that looked close enough to touch if I stretched my hand high enough. Ash was there. Right where I'd left him, or maybe right where he'd always been, waiting for someone who wouldn't spook at the first crack of a gate hinge or shout from Holt's flashlight. That he raised his head when he saw me slip through the gap in the fence. Ears forward, breath puffing slow and steady in the dark. Not moving away. Not stepping closer either. Just waiting. I wondered if he could feel it too, that thin string stretched between us. The one that hummed in my chest every time his eyes found mine. Hey, I said softly, voice too loud in the hush of frost and old wood. You stayed. He flicked one ear. A breeze tugged at the loose strands of his mane, tossing a shadow of him across the fence rail in front of me. I leaned my arms on the cold wood, gloves off this time. I wanted to feel everything. The bite of winter. The rough grain of the fence. The possibility that maybe, just maybe, tonight he'd choose to close that last inch again. You ever wonder, I murmured, mostly to myself, if maybe the fence is just a trick we play on ourselves? Like, we need it more than you do. Ash shifted. His hoof scraped the dirt, a low thud that vibrated up my arms through the wood. They all think you're dangerous, I went on, my voice catching on the word like it hurt to say. Too much muscle, too much head, too many scars to trust. My breath clouded the dark. Ash lowered his head, nostrils flaring as he tested the scent of me on the frost. They say the same about people like me, I whispered. Not in so many words. But it's there. In how they look at you when you're too quiet to joke back. Too much. Not enough. Broken in ways they'd rather not see. I let my hand drift forward, slow, careful, no sudden moves. My fingertips hovered over the rail where his muzzle bobbed in the cold. For a heartbeat, I thought he'd step back. Flick an ear, snort, vanish into the dark pasture the way Holt swore he always would, but Ash didn't move. His ears flicked. His warm breath tickled the tips of my numb fingers. And then, slow as the first drip of thaw off an old roof, he stepped forward, his muzzle touched the back of my knuckles. A soft brush. Gone almost before I could breathe it in. I froze, not because I was afraid, but because I knew if I broke the spell too soon, he'd remember the fence was there. That he didn't owe me anything. That this was a risk he didn't have to take. So I stayed still. Let the cold settle in my bones, let the ache in my shoulders spread down my spine. Let the hush between us stretch tight as wire. Ash leaned in again. A gentle bump, his whiskers rough against my skin, his warm breath wrapping around my wrist like a promise. I could feel it then. The hush under all that muscle and bone. The steady drum of his heartbeat, so close it made mine stutter to keep up. He didn't pull back this time. He stayed there, muzzle pressed to my sleeve, his breath melting the frost one soft exhale at a time. I wanted to speak, to tell him thank you, or I'm here, or I won't run. But the words tangled up behind my teeth, stuck in the part of me that had never been good at saying what mattered most. So I let my palm drift higher, slow, like a prayer. My fingers brushed the soft fur under his jaw. A warmth bloomed there, a hush that chased the cold from my skin. His eyes fluttered half-closed, his ears swiveling back, relaxed for the first time since I'd met him. The fence creaked under my leaning weight, but neither of us moved. The stars above us felt closer than ever, so close I could swear I heard them humming, the same hush as his heartbeat thrumming against my hand. Behind me, the wind rattled the bare branches by the old hay shed. A distant clang, maybe a gate banging loose or a water bucket tipping in the wind. Ash's ears flicked at the noise, but he didn't flinch. He pressed closer instead, so close his forehead bumped my cheek when he lifted his head to look past my shoulder. I laughed, too soft, too breathless. My hand slipped along his neck, fingers buried in the warm patch where the cold hadn't yet bitten. For a second, I let my forehead rest against his. The cold wood of the fence dug into my ribs, but I didn't care. I could feel it then, his breath, his warmth, his heartbeat knocking against the thin space between us. A promise in muscle and blood that didn't need words. We stayed like that while the wind danced around us, rattling the loose fence boards and humming through the old barn walls. The ranch was a world away, Holt's barks, the jokes in the bunkhouse, the chores I'd left half done. None of it touched us here at IT. Was just him. And me. And a heartbeat so steady I wondered if it could drown out every restless part of me that ever wanted to run, but everything good has a crack in it. I should have known better than to stand still long enough for someone to notice that a sharp beam of light sliced through the dark, catching the frost in bright, angry streaks. Holt's voice, rougher than usual, carrying over the hush of the pasture. Lennox. What the hell you doing out here? Ash jerked, not back, not away. Just a twitch of muscle under my palm. I pressed my forehead harder against his fingers, fisting in his mane like I could hold him there if I just tried hard enough. The light swung closer. Holt's boots crunched through the frozen grass. Hey. Get away from that fence. You looking to lose a hand? Ash shifted, pulling his head back slow, controlled, like he didn't want to but knew better than to test the bark in Holt's voice. The warmth slipped from under my palm, leaving my skin raw in the cold. I forced myself to straighten, to peel my hand off the rail like it hadn't just been wrapped in something I'd spent half my life chasing. Holt reached me, flashlight blinding me for a heartbeat before he dropped it to my boots. His breath stank of stale coffee and cheap chewing tobacco. You trying to prove a point? He snapped. That freak'll bite your fingers clean off if he gets spooked. He didn't spook, I said quietly. Holt laughed, a sharp bark that made Ash flick his tail behind him. Not yet. Give him a reason. He'll remember what he is soon enough. I swallowed the words I wanted to spit, that Ash was more than Holt would ever understand. That I'd felt something back there in the hush between fences no clipboard or barked order could erase, but Holt wouldn't hear it. He'd never hear it, so I just nodded, same as always. The ghost of Ash's warmth still humming under my skin. And get back to the bunkhouse, Holt growled, already turning away. Next time I catch you here, I'll lock the damn gate myself. I watched him stomp off, boots punching holes in the frost. I waited until his light vanished behind the shed before I turned back to the fence. Ash stood where I'd left him. Head high, breath a soft cloud in the brittle air. He didn't step closer. He didn't need to. I could still feel him, so close it made my chest ache. I'll come back, I whispered. I promise. His ears twitched. His head dipped once, just enough to catch the moonlight in his eyes like a secret only I was meant to see. Then the wind carried my promise into the dark, and the heartbeat I'd felt only hours ago settled back where it belonged, not gone. Just waiting. I didn't plan to go back out there that night. I told myself I wouldn't. Holt's voice still scraped around in my head like sandpaper, repeating that threat about locking the gates for good. And I knew him, knew he'd do it, too. He'd padlock the old pasture and shove Ash out of the good paddock where the paying clients could see him. He'd say it was for safety, but really it would be for control. Holt loved fences more than any horse ever did, so I told myself I'd stay in my bunk. That I'd bury my face under the thin blanket and pretend the wind howling through the cracked window was enough to drown out the itch under my skin. But lying there, I could feel it. That hush between fences. That heartbeat I wasn't ready to give back to, so when the old clock on the wall clicked over to 1 a.m., I was up. Boots on, coat zipped to my chin, scarf tugged up until it brushed my lips. The bunkhouse was dead quiet, except for Sam's soft snoring and the radio one of the guys had left on too low to hear anything but static. I slipped out like I'd been doing it forever. Maybe I had. The sky had changed again, the brittle frost haze of last night traded for a low, rolling mist that curled around the fences like smoke. My breath caught in it as I crossed the yard, boots crunching on gravel slick with ice. I told myself I was just checking. Just making sure he was there. Just one look, then I'd come back before Holt could even dream of dragging his boots out here to check on the idiot girl who didn't know when to quit, but we both knew I was lying. Ash was waiting. Of course he was. Standing by the far fence line, head turned toward the barn like he'd heard me coming long before my boots found the gap in the old boards. He didn't move when I stepped closer. Didn't shift his weight or toss his head. Like he was skittish. He just watched. Always watching. Hey, I whispered into the mist. Couldn't sleep. His ears flicked forward. A quiet huff of breath rolled through the cold, catching the loose strands of my hair and lifting them just enough to make me feel how close he really was. I hooked my arms over the top rail, letting the chill bite into my bare hands. I didn't mind the cold anymore, not if it meant I could feel the warmth under his skin when he chose to give it. I keep thinking, I said, voice low so it wouldn't shatter the hush, about that heartbeat. Yours. How it feels steadier than mine. Ever has. Ash lowered his head, nostrils brushing the splintered wood near my elbow. I didn't move. I let him take the scent of me, the cold, the fear I hadn't found a name for yet. Sometimes, I went on, eyes fixed on his, I wonder if you'd run. If the fence fell. If you'd bolt straight through the open gate and never look back. The words caught in my throat like frostbite. Because the truth was, I wasn't talking about him anymore. Maybe I never had been. His ears flicked at a distant creak, the barn roof shifting under the weight of old snow, maybe. Or a door hinge that never learned to hush its complaints. He didn't spook. He didn't step away. He just leaned closer, so close his breath wrapped around my wrist like it was something he meant to keep. I slid my hand along the top rail until my fingers hovered over his muzzle. He didn't flinch when I let them drift lower, brushing the fine hair where his jaw curved warm and strong under my palm, and there it was again, that drum, that hush. His heartbeat, steady under the skin, whispering to mine that maybe running wasn't the only way to feel free. At a sharp crack split the quiet, so sudden I flinched hard enough to bite my tongue. Ash's head jerked up, ears pinned, eyes wide at the sudden noise. The fence behind me rattled like something had slammed against it, voices. Low at first, then clearer. Footsteps on frozen dirt. The beam of a flashlight bouncing through the mist. Told you she'd be out here, someone muttered. Holt. Of course it was Holt. Ash shifted, hoof stamping once in the dirt. He didn't bolt, not yet, but the tension hummed under my palm like a warning. It's okay, I whispered, pressing my hand firmer against his neck. I'm here. It's okay. I wasn't sure which one of us I was lying to. The beam found me first. Blinding white that made my eyes sting. I turned my face away, but it was too late. Holt barked my name like he was chewing glass. Lennox. His boots thudded across the frozen ground. Another hand trailed behind him, one of the new boys, all puffed up and nervous, like he needed Holt to see him do something right for once. I felt Ash tense. His breath hitched under my fingers, warm and sharp. I leaned closer to the fence. My forehead brushing his mane. Don't run, I begged him. Please don't run. His ear flicked back to catch my voice. He stayed. He stayed. Holt stomped up beside the fence, breath puffing out in angry clouds. His flashlight bobbed wild. catching Ash's flank, my hands, the frost glinting on the rail. You think this is a damn petting zoo, Lennox? He snapped. You think I got insurance for you to lose an arm out here at midnight? He's not dangerous, I shot back, too fast, too sharp. He's a time bomb. Holt barked, cutting me off. He's trouble. And you, he jabbed the flashlight at my chest. You're the fool standing close enough to be the headline when he finally snaps. Ash's breath flared under my palm. He shifted again, hoof stamping in the mud, but he didn't back off. He pressed closer. Closer than he'd ever dared with anyone watching. I pressed my palm harder to his neck, willing him to stay calm. Willing myself not to look away from Holt's glare. He's not the problem, I said, my voice trembling with something I hadn't meant to say out loud. It's the fence. It's you. Holt stepped forward so fast I nearly lost my balance. The flashlight jabbed into the fence rail, rattling the boards. You don't talk to me about my damn fences, he snarled. You don't know what happens when they come down. I opened my mouth, to say what, I don't know. Maybe to beg him not to spook Ash, not to push him back into that restless, head-high bolt I'd seen flicker in his eyes the first day, but the thing that came out instead was the thing I'd been choking on for weeks. I need him, I said, the words cracked in the cold air like a branch splitting under old snow. Holt froze. The new kid behind him shuffled his boots, eyes darting between me and the horse pressed so close I could feel his heartbeat through the rail. That Holt's voice dropped. Quieter now, but meaner somehow. You need a wild horse? For what? To feel sorry for yourself when he breaks your pretty face open? Ash's head lifted then. His breath hit my cheek, warm, steady, real. The heartbeat under my palm drummed louder, like he knew I'd just cracked something I couldn't glue back together. I'm not leaving him, I said. Simple. Stupid. Trude Holt's laugh was sharp and humorless. No, Lennox, you are. You're done here. Pack your things. By sunrise. Behind him, the new kid flinched. I didn't. I just pressed my face closer to Ash's neck, the cold rail biting into my ribs. Ash didn't move. He didn't bolt. He didn't flinch from the flashlight beam bouncing off his eyes. He just leaned into my palm, heartbeat steady, breath warm enough to melt every splinter of frost between us. Holt turned, boots crunching away through the frozen mist. The flashlight bobbed like a dying star. The kid followed, head down, pretending not to see the girl at the fence and the horse who didn't run. When they were gone, I let my forehead rest against Ash's mane. My breath caught in his coat, my glove slipping to the dirt by my feet. I'm sorry, I whispered. I'm so damn sorry. Ash breathed out, slow and calm. His heartbeat under my palm didn't falter. Not once, and in that hush, that heartbeat that didn't belong to me but maybe did, I realized I hadn't lost yet, not if he stayed, not if I did. Too, I didn't sleep after Holt's words settled in my head like stones dropped into a still pond. By sunrise. I lay on my bunk. Boots still muddy on the floor, my bag half packed at my feet. Around me, the bunkhouse breathed its stale chorus of Sam's snores, the soft drip of a leaky pipe by the sink, the old radio's static that no one bothered to turn off anymore. I stared at the dark ceiling and counted every heartbeat in my chest. I tried to match it to his, the steady drum I'd felt under my palm when Holt barked and threatened and called him dangerous. But mine never settled the way his did. It skipped and stuttered and reminded me why I'd always end up by 4 a.m., I stopped pretending I could lie still. I shoved the last of my things into my bag, the frayed gloves with the missing fingertips, my old sketchbook with horse outlines half finished, the photo of my grandfather's roan gelding, creased so many times it was more memory than paper now. I could have left then. Should've. The smart thing would have been to slip out the back, toss my bag in my beat-up truck, and head west until Holt's scowl faded behind me. Start fresh somewhere new, the way I always did, but some part of me knew I'd never really leave if I didn't see him one last time. The frost was thicker than ever, a crust of white that turned every fence rail and patch of dirt into something brittle and silent. My breath felt too loud when it hit the air. My boots left sharp tracks that pointed in only one direction, the old paddock behind the hay shed where Ash waited. I didn't run. I didn't hurry. I walked slow, bag slung over my shoulder like the weight of every goodbye I'd ever packed. When I reached the fence, he was there, standing under the leaning post where the old floodlight hadn't worked in years. His shape was half shadow, half moonlight, ears flicked forward like he'd heard me thinking about him hours ago. I dropped the bag in the dirt and hooked my arms over the top rail. The frost burned my bare skin, but I didn't care. "Hey," I whispered. My voice cracked around the cold. "Guess you heard." Ash didn't snort, didn't stamp, didn't turn away. He just stepped forward, one hoof at a time, slow as a secret. His breath curled out in a warm mist that hit my sleeve and sank through the chill. I pressed my forehead to the rail. Closed my eyes. Let the silence wrap around us like it always did. "They're gonna lock you up tighter when I'm gone," I murmured, the words so soft I wasn't sure I'd said them out loud. "No more fence line for you. No more standing here like you've got your own kingdom." He leaned closer. His nose brushed the splintered wood by my cheek. The warm hush of his breath slipped under my collar like a promise I didn't know how to keep. I lifted my hand, slow, careful. His whiskers twitched when my palm touched the soft fur just under his jaw. He didn't flinch. He pressed into it. I felt it then, the heartbeat. Strong. Certain. The one that had held me still when I should have run. The one that told me, "Stay. Just stay." Behind me, the wind rattled the loose boards of the hay shed. I thought I heard a door hinge groan, maybe Holt's boots on the frost, maybe just my mind playing its old tricks. I didn't care. I leaned my forehead to his. My breath caught in the warmth where his mane brushed my brow. "I could take you," I whispered. The idea was so stupid it made my chest ache. "Throw open the back gate, lead you down the service road before Holt knows you're gone. We'd just go." Ash shifted, his ears flicking at my voice. He pressed closer, the fence groaned under his weight, the hush between us trembling like wire pulled too tight. I pictured it, the gate swinging open. His hoofs drumming down the old dirt lane, frost flying off his flanks. My boots pounding beside him until we vanished over the low rise where the road curved out of sight, but it was a lie, and we both knew it. "You wouldn't run," I said, a laugh caught in the corner of my throat. "Not with me yanking your lead rope and Holt's truck right behind us. You'd stop. You'd stand there and watch the fence close again." Ash breathed out, warm, patient. His heartbeat thrummed under my palm, steady as always. "You'd stay," I said. "You always stay." I wondered if he knew how badly I wanted to do the same. A sharp clatter broke the hush, boots striking gravel, a low bark of a voice that snagged in the cold air. Holt. Of course it was Holt. Even when I didn't see him, he was there, the keeper of locks, the voice that said no further. I didn't look back. I didn't need to. I knew what I'd see: a flashlight beam, scowl carved deep into the frost, a finger pointed at the fence like it was a line I'd crossed too many times. "Lennox." His shout cut through the hush, bounced off Ash's flank and hit me square in the ribs. "Didn't I tell you?" I didn't flinch. I didn't pull my hand away from Ash's warm neck. "You did," I said. My voice was steady for once, the first time it had been steady since the day I arrived. "You did." Holt's boots punched closer. I could hear the frost crunch, the flashlight hissing against the mist. "You got your bag packed," he snarled. Truck gassed up. "Or you planning to stand there until he kicks your teeth in?" Ash didn't move. He pressed closer. So close I could feel that heartbeat thudding against my palm like a question. "Lennox." Holt barked. Closer. Now, I felt his breath in the cold behind my shoulder. I said, "Move." Ash's ear flicked toward the sound, but he didn't shy. He didn't step away. He just leaned his massive head harder into my touch, a quiet barricade between me and every voice that said go. I turned my head, just enough to see Holt's outline, flashlight beam bobbing between my boots and Ash's flank. "You know what your problem is?" Holt spat. "You think fences don't matter? That rules don't hold." I laughed, soft, sharp. It tasted like frost in my mouth. You know what yours is, Holt? You think they're the same thing. He didn't get it, of course he didn't. He turned, cursing under his breath, flashlight beam swinging wild as he stomped back across the pasture toward the barn. When the light vanished behind the old hay shed, the hush closed in again. Just me and Ash, the fence line, the low pulse under my palm. I stayed like that until my arm ached from leaning over the rail, until my fingers went stiff in his mane, until the first watery smear of dawn turned the frost to silver. Ash never moved. Not once. He breathed out slow and steady, his heartbeat a hush against the dark that refused to fade. I could have swung that old latch. I could have slipped through the gate, pressed my face to his neck with nothing but moonlight and fear between us. But I didn't. Not because I didn't want to, but because the fence wasn't the thing that held him here, and maybe, just maybe, it wasn't what held me either. When the sun cracked over the barn roof, I stepped back. My boots hit the frozen dirt like a promise. Ash lifted his head, slow, watchful, eyes locked on mine. I pressed my palm one last time to the cold rail. He leaned his forehead to it like he was pressing back, my heartbeat and his caught between splinters and frost. I'll come back for you, I whispered. That he didn't nod. Horses don't make promises like that. But he didn't step away either. He stayed. When I grabbed my bag from the dirt, I didn't look back at the bunkhouse. I didn't look at Holt's boot prints punched into the mud. I just kept my eyes on Ash, and the thin threads stretched tight between us, and when I turned toward the road, I swear I felt it, that hush under skin and bone, that steady drum that said you don't always have to run, sometimes you stay, and sometimes you know that what's waiting on the other side of the fence is closer than it ever was before.